take a quick 2-0 lead in the series. And our Terran player starts here to the bottom right of the map in blue. As you can see, this is for Team Liquid. It is TaeJa. And TaeJa's opponent, of course, starting to the bottom left of Newkirk in red, is 1-0 in the series. It is TLO.
And now we get to see what TLO is going to do with this game, because that last one, that's not something you can do every game. And he has said that he wants to go to macro games, so we're going to see if he's going to play more normally, if TaeJa's going to give him the opening to play greedy again, because as we've seen in pretty much all the games that TaeJa's played, and actually every matchup, he has been kind of sloppy early on. He has given up disadvantages like that. And, you know, if that keeps happening, TLO, he is, like I said, a really smart, reactive player. If TaeJa gives him those advantages, he's actually going to use it, unlike some other players.
Yeah. One of the things that I just want to point out, guys, if you are just tuning in and you want to have additional information about the tournament, make sure that you jump on Reddit /r/StarCraft. There are a few threads up where you will have detailed information about things like the prize pool. There is also a link to the document on Google that was earlier mentioned by Semler, where you can see which games are broadcasted on which stream. So if you want to have any of these information, then have a look on Reddit /r/StarCraft. There's everything listed. And there's also an interview with TLO that we recorded earlier today. There's a link up there in one of the threads where he talked a little bit about his group, the performance yesterday, his expectations for today and the tournament in general, and just a little bit of random chit-chat about things like his training regime, about how he prepares for these matches. So if you're interested in all that behind-the-scenes stuff, then definitely check out Reddit and also, of course, Team Liquid. And now let's find out if he's able to take a 2-0 lead in that series, which would actually be really amazing for him. That would put him in a great position.
Yeah. It was actually really intriguing in that interview. He mentioned that he hasn't really been holding to that practice schedule. Like he made a pretty big deal about it, how he was regimenting himself very strictly in terms of exercise and diet and just planning out his day and practice schedule really closely. And then after that, he was having just a greatly increased success. And everyone kind of attributed that to the new practice schedule. But he said he's actually not following it very closely. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I feel it's always one of those things that you start doing, and it's so difficult to keep that up if you're on your own. If you have someone who does it together with you, then you can motivate each other. But if you're on your own, you need so much discipline. So I can certainly see where he's coming from when he says that it's pretty difficult for him to keep that up.
Yeah, he did say he was still trying to hit the high points and meet the important objectives from that. And like his play is inarguably 10 times better than it had been.
Oh,
even just 6 months ago.
Yeah, it's definitely right. I mean, right now we have him on the two bases, of course, standard openings for both players. We don't see the Reapers this time for TaeJa. He's relying on the SCV Scout instead. And with the build that we have here for him, you will, of course, see that early command center, the CC first on the high ground. It's kind of one of these super standard builds that Terran has these days against Zerg. It's very, very safe. You get that early command center out there. You have the additional mule, so it's a great way to start a game.
Yeah, it is actually 100% safe as long as you position your buildings properly. Even against a 6 pool, it turns out you can actually block off the rest of the wall in with a couple extra E-bays, and you actually don't die to anything if you do that build properly. So if you want to be a little bit more economical, if you don't want to open up with a Reaper or Barrack CC, that's pretty much the go-to build in TVZ right now.
Yeah. And if you're not up against cats, then usually you won't find that hatch at your natural. So
that doesn't actually work. If the Terran has seen it before, it's not actually good. As much as that'll piss cats off to say.
Now, there actually, who was that? We had a player in the WCS Challenger League in Korea who did a really good job with that. Was that true?
I saw that game. I don't know who it was. I don't remember.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. Like a few of the matches that we've seen recently,
it was
really
probably
showed.
Hiva.
Yeah, maybe. It really showed that Zerg is trying to just make something happen against the command center first, but it seems to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, it just doesn't really seem to be much of a response other than out-greeting it. And even then, a lot of Zergs have been opting for Speedling first against it just to get the map control and kind of put the fear of a Roach Rush or a Baneling all in the Terran player.
Do you think that's really worth it? You're like going into the fast speed when you already see the command center first? Because yes, you can try to scare your opponent, but if you don't plan to go into that aggression, is it really worth it?
I'm not really sure, but the thing is, Korean Zergs have pretty much seemed to come to consensus that you're going to have to do damage with Roach Baneling, or you're going to have to really, really scare your opponent to have much of a chance going into the mid-game. And in that scenario, then I'd say, yeah, it's really important to have Speedling to set up that kind of aggression.
Well, in the game at hand, now we have TaeJa going into a third CC as well. His stim has started, and for TLO, talking about that speed, we have it already halfway done. The first Hellions are now on the map, and this is what TaeJa uses to scout a little bit what's going on here. Sees, of course, the hatch of his opponent, the third, and as you would expect for TLO, the extra cranes are already on the map to start that creep spread.
Yeah, of course. He's just one of the most conscientious players about his creep spread and has been right since the beginning. Even back before anyone paid any attention to it, he was very, very focused on it.
Can we agree that Scarlet has the best creep spread out there, including the Koreans? Oh.
It's obviously incredibly good, but I mean, so is pretty much all the Koreans. Like, if you're going to be a good Zerg player, you have to be almost perfectly efficient with it.
You think? I actually feel that a lot of the Koreans are pretty lackluster with their creep.
Well, that's because they all play so aggressive that, like, she plays a much more macro-oriented game than a lot of them do, so she has more opportunities to actually demonstrate that. But I feel if they played similar styles, they would be at least almost as good.
Yeah. Good point. 1-1 for both of them now up on the board. We have the first Spine Caller, which gives TLO a little bit more safety against the Hellions. It's always a little bit risky when you have to defend on a map like Newkirk, your third and your natural. If those Hellions run it at some point, then you are in pretty much a predicament. Once more, the speed for the Overlord, so scouting safety and also just the spread on the map that we've seen in Game 1. I would really like TaeJa to get the Viking this time.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to be that something he prefers to do. He is getting that starport very quickly. The one thing is, if you do get those Vikings, then it slows down your 2 medevacs, and that initial 2 medevac timing is just so, so important in terms of controlling creep and making sure that Zerg isn't over-droning, that I can kind of understand. It's a bit of a trade-off there, and both sides have their positives, but it does seem that TaeJa prefers the medevac.
Do you feel that it would still be worth getting the Viking just after the initial 2 medevacs so that you can still hit the timing, but then afterwards you start just forcing your opponent back?
I do think that's the better option, because especially with these quick Overlord speed builds that we've seen out of a few players, they just get such good map vision because they have Overlords everywhere by the 10-minute mark. And just, you're not going to slip a drop around that. You're not going to slip anything around that.
It's like a legal map hack.
Yeah.
Well, layer tech is nearly completed for TLO, and right now TaeJa is just once again hugging the creep line, trying to just take down a few of those active tumors if he can, getting his own third base up. And with an economy like this, when you have one of those styles where the Terran player is not too aggressive, he's usually quite happy just sitting on those 3 bases, getting his upgrades out. And most of the time you see really a lot of aggression coming out when 3-3 is on the board, and then that's the time when the Terran really shines, especially against a build like Ling Meter Baiting, which we see coming out of TLO at this time.
Yeah, a lot of Terrans continue to attack anyway, but that's kind of just because they can, and they can trade efficiently. But the real scary portion, Mutiling Baneling does not beat 3-3 bio. That just does not happen.
Yeah.
That's what every Terran is aiming to get to.
We actually talked about what you just mentioned a little bit yesterday. Oops, there come those Hellions again against the Zerglings, but the Marines are there in time. Yeah, we talked a little bit about the ability of the Terran to move out with those medevacs and just go on creep, and the Mutalists just won't be there at that time. So when the Zerglings rush in, even with Banelings, you can just always lift off and move back.
Yeah, TLO actually not very many units out on the field, and I don't know if he has any Banelings. He's morphing a bunch now, and he has more Zerglings coming out, and he will be able to beat this back. But
too late, I think. The hatch goes down, and here come the Banelings, and immediately that lift that we've been talking about earlier. And TaeJa doesn't even retreat. He's just going up into the main base, trying to control the choke point. TLO, on the other hand, is going for the counter-aggression, realizing that this is most likely not going to give him the win. But this is actually like a very bad position for the Zerg player to engage this army.
Yeah, this is essentially game-ending here, because that drop in main is going to do so much. His counterattack did absolutely nothing except for waste more units. Losing that third hatchery, really, everything's just falling apart really, really quickly for TLO here. He is at least going to save his main hatchery and kill off quite a few units there, but the damage has already been done. And that's kind of shocking, because that's a very standard move-out timing for Terran. As a Zerg player, you should absolutely be ready for that.
I feel that TLO did not expect such a commitment by TaeJa. He expected him to play a little bit more safe, as he did in the last game. Not that aggressive, but if you just look at the resources lost, it's pretty incredible. We have TLO with 2,800 lost against 1,200. That's like insane at this stage in the game.
Yeah, and we see his Spire is finished, but he can only afford 4 mutas now because he had to do infest so much and lost so much economy.
He's down 50 supply against the Terran player even before we hit the 50-minute mark, and that's definitely not where you want to be. So 2-2 is going to complete for TLO a little bit faster. That gives him an edge in the upgrades, but with those numbers on the board, it's not only going to even matter. The Zerglings rushing in, Widow Mines with their hits, the Marines just trying to move back, and those Mutalists, of course, not doing a thing against the medevacs with all that anti-air still being around.
Yeah, a good split by TaeJa is enough to just force TLO straight out of the game.
GG, and TLO looking, well, dominated here by TaeJa.